Debbie and I were chatting this morning about your aunt and your aunt in Venezuela. She's in her 80s, and you're in constant touch with her. And in a way, her life gives you a window into not just socialism over there, but creeping socialism in this country.
Right.
Talk a little bit about her.
Yeah. Well, at first I didn't really understand what she meant by, I have to go to this grocery store to get eggs, and then I have to go to this one to get bread, and then I have to go to this one to get this something else. I never really I was like, oh yeah, that's terrible. Or, I can't find toilet paper anywhere. I have to use Kleenex, or I have to use a towel and wash it and this and that. It just really didn't, while I thought it was horrific, I didn't understand it. I couldn't put myself in her shoes to see what she was feeling.
And
So,
not just the shortages, the empty stores in Venezuela, but talk about how the price escalation,
yeah,
the levels of inflation. I mean, we help your aunt a little bit,
right.
but we've decided to help her a little more
Yeah.
and say why.
Yeah, so my aunt used to get a pension, and really her pension was pretty good. In American standards, it was probably I would say about $10,000 a month, pension. She's in her late 80s. And all of a sudden, Venezuela's currency really became worthless. Inflation rate was 1,000,000%. We can't even imagine that, right? We're here at 5% inflation, 1,000,000% inflation. So her $10,000 became like a quarter cents,
Yeah.
25 cents versus $10,000. It was almost nil. So we had,
And meanwhile, with that shrunken currency, like we go to the grocery store, if you buy a roasted chicken, it's, what, $3, $4.
yeah, yeah. So
What about
my aunt says that to buy a chicken in Venezuela costs about $20 to $30. So obviously she can't afford protein. She can't afford to eat protein. At her age, she should be eating a healthy diet of protein and carbs and all of those things. She can't do that. So
Now, for Americans in general, this is incomprehensible. I know
yeah,
when I was growing up, we didn't have those kinds of shortages, but what we did have was ration cards
yeah,
because everything was processed through the government and you were allotted a certain
yeah,
amount, so much rice, so much cooking oil, and so on. But Americans are now getting a taste of it, not
right.
just under COVID, but under Biden.
Right. And you often talk about India and the rationing in India, but the difference, and when then I bring up Venezuela, is that Venezuelans were not used to that. I think in India, that is how you grew up and you didn't know anything different. Venezuelans were used to going to the grocery store and getting whatever they wanted. They could get the brand of shampoo they wanted, the brand of toilet paper they wanted, anything, right? And then all of a sudden they had to have they rationed it because they didn't have enough. And what happens with socialism, and I want everybody to kind of realize this, during COVID, when you went to the grocery store and you were super frustrated because you went and there was no toilet paper, or you went and there was no, the brand of eggs that you typically get was gone, the milk that you like, no more. You had to get the generic milk or milk that you never really liked. So you had to get things at the grocery store that weren't really what you were used to. That is the reality of socialism permanently.
Well, let's say why. What happens is the government imposes increasingly confiscatory taxation. It drives these private companies out of business. And the government goes, oh, they're not providing eggs. They're not providing, so we need to do it. So the government takes it over. And then you get a government run, but then you have one type of toilet paper. It's the generic
Right. It's
brand.
the national brand. And why? Because all of these companies that are not making a profit anymore leave. They're no longer there. So goods and services can no longer be provided by private individuals or private companies. They leave. They leave the scene. And the only thing left is a national company that makes toilet paper like sandpaper. And so that's what happens. And it's
I mean, I'm thinking about all
yeah,
these young people. They're so used to an abundant standard of living, and we know it with our own kids. They take things for granted that we never had. And yet these are people who think somehow socialism is
Really?
idealistic. It's gonna make things better. But I mean, what they don't realize is that socialism is drab. It's uniform. It's one size fits all. It's a kind of hollowing out of the soul. And socialist societies are really dull.
Well, yeah, nobody has the will to do anything anymore. I mean, think about it. If you're given, and then you actually think that whatever you're given by the government is is good, but you were used to like going to a coffee shop with your iPhone, and you're doing Snapchat with your friends and things like that. Well, I don't think Apple would like being taxed at 90%. Do you really think Apple could operate that way? So what would happen? Apple would cease to exist. And do you think that the government could come up with an Apple product?
I mean, it's
Are
the
you
secret.
kidding
It's
me?
the secret wish of the progressives to control those
Yes.
companies. I mean, their main objection to Facebook is that Facebook is doing censorship on their behalf, but they want to do it themselves. So they want it to be Biden censorship and not Zuckerberg censorship.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Well, I mean, and if we have chats like this all the time, and you're now on Locals, Dinesh.locals.com, and it's really fun. The last couple of weeks, you've been doing these Q&As Thursday
yeah, I mean, I
nights.
do some
Yeah.
some content that's censored elsewhere. You
Yeah,
just
exactly.
can't
No,
talk about.
you
They're
talk
like,
about pretty much everything, and so you get a little window into our like living room and my office, because that's where you hang out mostly.
yeah, and the Q&As are cool. I mean, we do on the
Yeah.
podcast. People can
Yeah.
send in questions, and I try to answer from time to time. But I do a kind of freewheeling, no holds barred, 45-minute, 30 to 45-minute Q&A once a week. It's Thursday. I'm gonna do one on Locals this
7:30
Thursday,
Eastern.
7:30 Eastern, and it's just
Yeah.
Dinesh.locals.com.
Yeah, and I come in and sneak in at the end and give you like
Tell me where I went wrong. Correct my errors.
the Deborah D'Souza podcast. Thank you very much. My husband likes to tease me about it because I'm a little bit of a control freak, in case you hadn't noticed. So
No, I think actually people like the interaction
Yeah.
because
yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of fun, and we don't always talk politics, but a lot of times we do, and so to get a
well,
little
I mean,
window-
I've posted on all kinds of topics.
Yeah.
You were laughing at
Oh,
the
yeah.
post I did on Locals about different types of food and which
Oh
cuisines,
my gosh!
which
I was like,
cultures
are you
take.
boring these people with all the foods? And,
No.
Yeah.
No. I mean,
So,
it was about which
anyway.
cultures take cuisine seriously.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's a lot of fun. But the socialism, is definitely something that that is a very serious topic, and we talk about it. Number one, because I personally deal with it with my family in Venezuela, and I see what it's done to their soul, and I don't want that here in America for anybody. I don't even wish it on the left.
I mean, it's easy to
know?
get into, and it's really hard to get
Oh,
out of.
Once you have it, I don't think you'll ever get out of it.